A present interest is one which includes any right to possess the property. That is a present interest. O to A for life. A has the right to possess the property at this moment. It is a present interest, a present possessory interest. If that interest will not become possessory until a later date, it is a future interest. When we say an interest, in Garrison asked this morning, an interest is an interest in land. The right to use, the right to sell, the rights that come when you get possession. We have a distinction between freehold estates and non-freehold estates. Remember, the present possessory interests are fee simple, life estate, term of years. Now, normally in your outlines they don't mention the term of years because term of years are what is called a non-freehold estate, right? So the other ones are freehold estates. It's a distinction that is mostly historical, of not a lot of relevance today, except when the gift is passed on in an estate, in wills and trust. The difference between a freehold and a non-freehold is that for some purposes, a non-freehold estate is treated as personal property. That's not what our course is. Our course is about real property. Absolute versus qualified. There's only one absolute estate, the fee simple. Absolute. That's the only one that's absolute. So what's the difference between absolute and qualified? An estate is qualified if it is subject to any condition which might terminate it prior to its natural termination. A life estate that could be terminated before the death of the holder is a qualified estate. Well, usually, frequently, that creates wrap problems for the future interest. Present possessory estate, fee simple absolute, life estate, estate for years. Right now, what is the fee simple absolute? It is one of infinite duration. In other words, by its nature, doesn't terminate, goes on forever. A life estate, how long does it last? Naturally, until the end of the life of the purchaser or of the life of another person. In the event, that is the term of it is dependent on the life of another person, that is going to be a life estate per author B. Two examples, all to A for life, life estate, all to A for the life of B, life estate per author B. A grant for to A and B for life makes A and B joint measuring lives, not a joint tenancy, but it makes them joint measuring lives. What does that mean? That estate persists until the last person dies. O to A and B and C and D. Who is a measuring life? A, B, C, and D. They're all measuring lives. So until the last one of them dies, the life estate continues. A estate for years is an estate with a fixed and certain period of duration. 10 years, 5 years. Words of purchase to A. Words of purchase. Who does it go to? The next words are going to tell you what they get. So those are words of limitation. And his heirs tell you it is a fee simple. For life tells you it's a life estate. For years, for 10 years, tells you it's a term for years. There is a further limitation on that. that could terminate them before. Now they're qualified. Rights and obligations of the life tenant. A life tenant has the right of possession. A life tenant has the right of alienation. A life tenant has the obligation not to commit waste. A life tenant has the right in fixtures. A fixture is a piece of personal property that is attached to the land. So if you build an air conditioning unit that is attached to the apartment, that's a fixture. If a life tenant creates a fixture, correct, and removing that fixture is going to create harm, they're liable for damages. But they have a right to it. An exception to that is fixtures that are in the trade, because the landlord, right, is actually taking into account in the price of the property that the person is going to build fixtures. For example, if you rent to a dentist, right? Well, you know dentists are going to have chairs. And those chairs are what? Attached to the realty. What happens when the dentist leaves? That chair belongs to the dentist. So I'm using an example of a term of years to kind of bring you the concept of the life tenant. That chair belongs to the tenant or to the life tenant. The question is not, does it belong to him or her? The question is, do you have damages when you take it? What is the right of possession in a life tenant? Well, you can own the land as what? As long as you're alive. What is the right of possession on a tenant per ultra V? A life tenant per ultra V. They have the right of possession as long as the measure in life is alive. The moment that person dies, your right of possession is over. Done. You can only give, a life tenant can only convey as much interest as they have. So a life tenant cannot give somebody else a fee simple. A life tenant can only convey a life tenancy. So since I have the right of alienation, meaning I may lease, I may sell, I may mortgage my interest in the land as a life tenant, when I convey my interest, all I can convey, when I lease my interest, all I can lease is my life estate. All I can sell is my life estate. All I can mortgage is the value of my life estate. I cannot give out more. This is part of the reason why you do a title search, and this is when we talked about marketability, right? If the person is selling you a fee simple, and gives you a deed for a fee simple, but in fact, all they have is a life estate, you can bet that somewhere, as you live in that property, 25, 10 years, 15 years, maybe a year later, when that life tenant dies, the remainder man or the grantor is going to come and say, I want the house back. What do you mean you want the house back? She sold, no, what she sold you was what? The life estate. But she said it was a fee simple. That's what she said. But she couldn't have sold you a fee simple because all she had was what? A life estate. Let's talk a little bit about restraints on alienation. There are 3 types of restraints that may be put in a piece of property, in real property. One of them is a disabling restraint. A disabling restraint is a restraint that purports to prohibit alienation of the estate and make the alienation invalid. I am told you cannot sell the property. I go ahead and I sell it. The grantor challenges it and says, I want the property back. I told you when I sold you the land that you could not sell it. In a disabling restraint, all that is invalidated is not your estate, but the one that was sold. I will go to court and challenge the sale. But you still, it's not challenging your grant or the holder's possession. Disabling restraints are prohibited in fee simples and life estates. In other words, they are prohibited in freehold estates. But it's not clear whether they're prohibited in non-freehold estates. Word of caution, do not confuse restraints on alienation with restraints on use. So long as the house is not used for non-school purposes, that's perfectly valid. That's not a restraint on alienation. That's a restraint on use. So long as you don't use the property for ice skating, so long as you use the property for this, so long as you use the property for that, those are restraints on use, not restraints on alienation. Forfeiture, this is different in that respect. If you sell it, not only is the sale valid, but you forfeit yours. See the difference? O to A, but if you sell it, not only don't you have the power to sell it, but you forfeit yours. That's a forfeiture. They're invalid on fee simples, but valid in everything else. You can put that type of restraint in a term of years or in a life estate. I give you 10 years, and you don't have the power to convey it. If you do, not only is that conveyance bad, but you forfeit your term of years. Or to A, but if A is attempted to convey it, the property goes back to somebody else. You lose it. Finally, promissory restraint. You promise not to alienate it. Or to A, but it covenants not to convey the property. Again, those are prohibited in fee simple, but not in life estates or term of years. So, if we put all this together, this is how it sounds like. Disabling restraints are prohibited on fee simples, life estates, and term of years. We don't know for sure on term of years. Certainly know they are prohibited on fee simples and life estates. Forfeiture restraints are prohibited on fee simples, but not on term of years or non-freehold estates. Promissory restraints are prohibited in fee simples, but not in the others. So, fee simples cannot be any restraint on alienation. All restraints on alienation are prohibited on fee simples. Life estates, the only restraint that's prohibited is disabling restraint, and term of years, the only one that is prohibited is term of years. Disabling. Make sense? So that's possible that you can see that in the question. O to A for life. A now sells the property to B, so the grants the O to A for life, but if you convey it, I will leave the life estate to X. Is that valid? Yes. This is a life estate.